Hey guys, I hope everybody's having a fantastic day, whether you're watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening. I'm glad you're here. I want to take a quick second before we get started and say thank you to all the channel members. Thank you. And thank you to all the channel subscribers. And thank you to anyone who just comes in and checks out my knife, my EDC content. Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy it. If you're so inclined and you like it, if you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon down there, it really does help me out and helps more people see the content. So today I wanted to talk about my collection and my favorite Tanto knives, or Tantos, or however you want to pronounce it, T-A-N-T-O, knives with, two distinct edges. And I wanted to start out with my PM2 Tanto. This is one I picked up from Brother Keith the Knife Freak. It is an S30V, regular super steel. It is got some Alan Putman custom micarta scales and a Lynch deep carry clip, as well as custom titanium hardware. I love this knife. I think it just looks really good. The weight of the blade, as opposed to my standard PM2 and my Warncliffe PM2, this one's just got more meat on the bone, I'd say. You can feel it, not only when you flick it, but when you close it. Just a fantastic knife. Let's get a little Spyderco paper cut test. And it's therapeutically slicey, not surprisingly so. That front grind is always me having cutter air, not getting it lined up, but it's very sharp too. And the great thing about a Tanto tip, I think my thumbnail said, what's the point? And the point is, you've got a point, but you've also got a direct edge going forward. So for piercing type of tasks, whether you're having to pierce watermelons or pierce apples, or save a Slurpee on a Saturday night at the gas station from a Slurpee invader, a Tanto, or Tanto, however you want to pronounce it, is going to give you that extra, what I would call piercing power, because you do have a little extra piercer there. It really is, to me, a functional tip, but you see a lot, as we'll see in this video, of different tips, right? So this is the PM2. This is its Tanto. Moving on, we'll come to another kind of radically different, but also a Tanto, and that is going to be in the Mr.MR Designs Cipher. So the Cipher is what I would call more of an American Tanto. I don't know why I call it that. I think it's because it's a little bit shorter, and that's what I think of it as. But this is a tall, flat ground primary grind. And then you've got this little Tanto at the tip. This knife is not only amazingly comfortable, it carries like a champ. It's got a wire clip that's concealed. It also has carbon fiber scales. If you're looking for a lighter package, I've got carbon fiber scales with it as well. M390 blade, OEM by Bestech, perfect thin gentleman's folder, and it is a Tanto. Now, you can get a Cipher D, which is this same knife. The D stands for drop point, if you want a drop point. And this little knife just shreds paper. I don't know why I'm going wonky on my cuts, but it is super slicey. It is just an absolute laser beam. Thin, tall, flat ground, and then that front grind is also very keen. And what do we say about Tanto kids? What are we learning today? They are fantastic piercers. So this point And that front edge are lined in such a way that this is great for sticking in watermelons, sticking in apples, and if you're having to rescue your Slurpee from a Slurpee Saver situation, you're threatened, you know, just a different knife. This is a full-size knife. This is one of my favorite modern pocket knives that's kind of from a newer designer, Mr.MR Designs. I just love this knife. This is a Cipher D, OEM by Bestech. Super cool Tanto, flipper only action, but it's a low profile flipper. I love it, and that's the Mr.MR Cipher. So moving on, we come to a thicker American-made Tanto. So this is a Medford Midi Marauder. So not the full-size Marauder, but the shorter Marauder. Still very thick in blade stock, very thick in handle stock, just a chunk of a knife. And this is the Tanto version. You can get this knife in a drop point or in a Tanto. I chose the Tanto because I thought it looked cool. You've got this deep hollow grind here about halfway down the grind, and then you've got this compound flat up at the front. Now this is a big hunk of steel. So this is going to be that through the car door piercer type setup, because you've got a diagonal Tanto front grind, and then you've got this hollow point, that's a Freudian slip, hollow grind that is very, very slicey, if I don't hit the choil. For a thick knife, this Medford Midi Marauder is a cutter. It does better cutting cardboard, thicker materials, where it wants to shred this paper, but where it really shines is not just on that top thick grind, because it is thick. You can see that tip, but it is an absolute devastating piercer. Great carry for a heavier knife, and I like a full-size chunky knife sometimes, and the Medford Midi Marauder for me fits the bill. I've got a couple of heavier knives, and this is one of them, one of my favorites, and it is a Tanto, and it is the Medford Midi Marauder. So moving on down the Tanto lane, we come to kind of another unique specimen, and this is the EMP EDC designed Ronin. And the Ronin is a front flipper in LMAX with a very unique Tanto blade. It has got flipper action if you like the middle finger flick. It's got this diagonal milled titanium scales with a backspacer that integrates a nice little lanyard loop there if lanyards are your thing. But a great front flipper. If you guys have followed the channel, know I'm not a huge fan of the front flipper. I kind of hate it. Right there with thumb flicking. But this one does it so well that you cannot really even argue with it because it works so well. This knife is thin. It's what I consider a gentleman's Tanto because it does take up such a low profile. Very, very slicey. You've got a hollow grind, thicker blade stock like all these will have, and shorter grinds, keep in mind. Most of these are going to be only half ground and the rest flat, so they're more, again, piercers. Drive them through a car door type scenario more so than a slicer. They're knives that are for slicing, they're knives that are for hard use, and they're knives for sticking in watermelons, sticking in cantaloupes, and using for piercing. And I think that's what the Tanto, one of its primary functions, can be. And I think when you look at the old school samurai swords and things like that, that's what they were used for. Now you've also on this one got a distinct secondary point there, which is great for detail cuts. But again, to me, it shines in the pierce. So that is the EMP EDC Ronin. And we will move on from there And we'll change things up a little bit, and we will look at this little fixed blade. This is the Midgards Messer Ratosk, Ratosk, I think is how it's pronounced. And you got this little S30V number series. This is 41 out of 100. Just a thick little, when I say thick, I don't even need my calipers. Yeah, you're looking at a 1/4 of an inch thick chunk of S30V here. So it's a Tanto, but it's a hard use Tanto. I mean, this is a chopper. This knife is used and has been used, as you can tell by the blade, to chop wood. So it's not going to be keenly sharp on any of these fronts because it's also stabbed in a lot of stuff. The front needs to be sharpened up again. But I can assure you, if you walked up to a car door or you walked up to a piece of plywood and you had to jam this implement, this tool, into it, that front tip is going to do a great job. I mean, it is very broad. You're not going to bend that tip. You're not going to break that tip. I do need to sharpen that tip a little bit, but it is an absolute stabber. And this is one of my Tanto fixed blades. We'll look at a couple more here shortly. But this is the Midgard Messer Ratosk. I've also got this knife in a drop point because it's such a good knife. I thought it was so cool, so small, yet so thick and overbuilt. So moving on, we come to a very pointy Tanto. Now this is the Jason Grant Tripper. This is also, ironically, OEM by Bestech, designed by Jason. It has got a traditional flipper. It has got a front flipper. And it's got this little coffin for the middle finger flick. I love this little knife. It's one of my favorite Tantos because it has such a splinter digger point. I mean, you can use this point for major detail work. You've got almost as much on that front grind as you do on this primary hollow grind. So this is hollow, this is flat. But as you can see, they're both razor sharp screamers, which makes for a devastating piercer. I mean, this is a knife that, should you drive it into a watermelon, a gourd, a cantaloupe, an apple, it's devastating the fruit. It is definitely a fruit puncturer. But it does have, unlike some of the others, kind of a delicate tip. So I wouldn't want to run this one into a car door. But in terms of running it into soft material, I think it's going to be great for that. I think it's an absolute winner. I love this little knife. I think it's just so comfortable in my hand with the choil. So well made. It's almost like a gripper in reverse mini. But this is the Jason Grant Tripper. So moving on, we come to a knife that is a little bit different. And this is the Riot XOM. The XOM is a gravity knife. So in a lot of places, it's not considered a legal alternative. In my particular place of residence, there's no problem with it as a gravity knife. It is a knife that operates within the skeleton where you've got this blade that simply goes up and down, just like so, travels on that skeleton, and then when you close it up, it locks it up. You can lock it there, and then you've got an absolute L-Max laser beam. Probably one of the sharpest knives in this lineup. Look at it, just absolutely devour paper with no catches, no grabs. Front grind, very sharp, very slicey, very pokey, very stabby. Fantastic manual out the front. I guess you call it a gravity knife because it is operated by just letting the blade fall out, or if you want to give it a little help, you can do that too. I love this knife. Got a very neutral handle. Carries great. Locks closed, locks open. The Riot XOM is what got me into the Riot Exos, because I wasn't crazy about the ones that didn't lock. I love this knife. Moving on, we come to another unique offering, and this is another USA made knife. This is the Axial Shift Gen 3 in MagnaCut with the Tanto blade. So again, you're going to have a shorter grind. So this is not made to be an absolute slicer. It's not a thin grind. It doesn't have the blade geometry for it. But what it is made to do is be a piercer. You've got this swedge here up on top. You've got this thick little front of the blade here. And then you've got this long flat. So it's not a hollow. It is a flat. It's not going to be as slicey as some of the other knives in the collection, but it is very, very slicey. For an EDC knife, it will cut into anything I need it to cut into. That front Tanto tip is very slicey if I can line it up right. Whoops. It's got bite, it's got cut. I'm just not driving it very well. And most importantly, it's got that piercing power. The thing that I think set Tantos apart is their ability to just go through material, especially watermelons, cantaloupes, you know, your bigger pieces of fruit, things like that where you've got some resistance, softer material. They can just be devastating. And I think they're just great additions to any collection, both from an EDC standpoint, carving pumpkins. When I'm recording this, it's Halloween. It'll come out, it's after Halloween. But at the same time, great pumpkin carver, great knife. This is the Axial Gear, Axial Knives, Shift, Gen 3, and it is the Tanto. So moving on, we come to another knife from EMP EDC. And this is their EMP EDC Nimble, which is one of my favorite first multi-deployment knives. And this is the Nimble T. So this is the same size as my little drop point Nimble with all the deployment methods in my original Nimble, but it has got a Tanto tip. So you've got this hollow grind here, L-Max, and you've got this flat ground tip up at the front. Fantastic little package, fantastic little design, super slicey, great EDC knife. I love carrying it. Probably got the best action of almost any of my EMP EDCs. They all have great action. This one just seems tuned to the hilt. I wasn't that interested in a Tanto when they first came out because I felt like it was redundant. But when I picked it up at Blade Show 2023 and checked out, or 2023, I love the reverse honeycomb pattern. I noticed that it was a lot different, or more different, from our original Nimble than just the blade shape. There were other improvements in the way that the knife had been refined. So I had to grab one. Absolutely love it. It's a banger of a knife. This is the EMP EDC Nimble T. So moving on, we come to another little odd fixed blade. And this is a Joey Roman little mini Tanto. Basically what he calls it. And this is a micarta handled, I want to say it's tool steel, chisel ground, little hollow grind on the front with a very thick chisel ground front. And this guy is nothing but a stabber. I mean, it will go through anything you need it to because that front is so well curved and angled. It's designed, that's the way it's designed to cut, is like that. Whether you're cutting cheese or cutting watermelon, sure, it'll cut It's chisel grind. It should cut. If I could get it to cut. That's my fail. It does cut. Probably needs to be sharpened a little bit, but this is a piercer, and that's what I use it for. It is a little demon of a knife. It's got great grip. It's got a great, comfortable handle. Handmade by Joey. Joey Roman. He's on Instagram. I'll leave a link to his stuff there. Makes some really cool knives. But I love this little guy. And this is the Mini or Micro Tanto. I think it's the Mini. And it's a little fixie Tanto. So we'll look at one more fixie Tanto and then we'll finish it up with a folder. So this is a wonderful, wonderful knife on several fronts. This is the Boker AK1 American Tanto in N690. And the reason it's so amazing to me is I also have the Boker AK1 in RWL34 that was about a $350 knife. This little knife is also made in Solingen, Germany. N690 instead of RWL. American Tanto instead of a reverse Tanto, if you want to call it that. And this little knife's about 169 bucks. I'll leave a link for it on Amazon. There's still a few on Amazon, and if they sell out, the dealer typically gets more in. But you can also find them at some of the dealers. If I see them in stock at River's Edge Cutlery, I'll leave that in the description as well. But these little knives are fantastic little fixed blades. The AK1 is a wonderful design. It's a daily carry Boker collaboration, but the ergonomics and the grip on this knife is second to none. This one has G10 handles and again an N690 blade, and it just happens to be an American Tanto, which what we learned today, kids, American Tantos are great for piercing watermelons, cantaloupes, gourds, and piercing other soft fleshy material should you run into a situation to where soft fleshy material needs to be pierced or punctured because you're being put in a defensive posture. But this is the Boker AK1. Huge fan. Love this knife. Brings us to our final knife. And I believe that is going to be this gorgeous little knife I traded for with Brother Paul Mills. And this is the Microtech Mini Socom Bravo Tanto. So it is in M390, carbon fiber, OEM by Reich, with some of the most amazing machining with that floating backspacer, the pocket clip, the lock bar, everything about this knife is just stunning, to say the least. You've got the thumb studs that also serve as your stop. And like every other Microtech that I've come into contact with, which hasn't been a bunch, they come absolutely screaming sharp from the factory. Whether it's a Ramlock Microtech that I picked up here, the USA, or one that comes from overseas, this guy is a baller. So this is the Socom, the Mini Socom Bravo from Microtech. It is the Tanto. You can also get that knife in the drop point if drop point's more your jam. And then before that, we were looking at the Boker AK1. And then we had our Joey Roman little Mini Tanto or Micro Tanto. We had our EMP EDC Nimble T. We had our Riot XOM. Axial gear, axial knives, Shift Gen 3, EMP EDC Ronin, Medford Midi Marauder, you got the Cipher from Mr. Designs. We have got the Tanto PM2. We have got our little Jason Grant Tripper. And finally, our last of the Tantos in this series is the Tanto from Midgard Messer, the Ratusk, R-A-T-O with an umlaut over it, S-K. Cool little knife. Again, they also make a lot of these in drop points. This one's not available in drop point. This one's not available in drop point. All the rest are available. This one's not available in drop point, but all the rest are available in drop point. Guys, I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I appreciate everything about you guys supporting me, supporting the channel, watching the content. It really fires me up. I do ask if you would please look out for the guy or gal to your left. Please look out for the guy or gal to your right. Please look out for each other. Go forward with love in your hearts and choose to bait, not hate. I love you all. Peace.